6 and verse 5. And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart were only evil continually. And it repented the Lord that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. And the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I created from the face of the earth, both man and beast and creeping thing, and the fowls of the air, for it repented me that I have made them. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Let's pray. Heavenly Father Jesus, Lord, we thank you for your word. Lord God, we thank you for your love and your mercy and how good you've been to us, Lord. I pray that you help us not waste or sin away these few precious hours of grace that we have left. Lord, I pray that you help us put oil on our lamps, Lord, and trim our wicks for the bridegroom coming. Lord, I pray that you help us and strengthen us in our heavenly name we pray. Amen. This was a time in humanity where people become incapable of hearing or even thinking about the thoughts of God, the words of God, following any thoughts except for their own. Matthew 24 says, But as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until that day that Noah entered into the ark. And knew not until the flood came and took them all away, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be. You must be aware that the devil is coming against this generation. He's doing it in our schools, in our universities, in our government, even in the house of God. Trying to eradicate everything that comes from the mind of God to blind an entire generation, to take them captive. Revelations 12:12 says, Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down upon you, having a great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time. These people in the book of Genesis must have had some kind of testimony of the creation of God, because they weren't that far off from the beginning. Must have had stories of knowledge, lineage. They allowed something to take over. That nature of that fallen nature of humankind, mankind, that same nature that was sown in the Garden of Eden. Same thing that's in me and same thing that's in you.
Yeah, that's right.
It's that thought where I can determine for myself what is good and what is evil. God, you don't have to tell me anymore. I got it myself. I can determine it. I know what to do. It's like Satan when he tempted Adam and Eve in the garden. They bought into it. They went with it. And they left that safety of God. They left that safety of Eden. You know, the devil never paints the whole picture. He only paints the picture with the sunshine and the roses and the strawberries. But he doesn't paint the picture of death and decay. He doesn't paint the picture of despair and depression. He doesn't paint the picture of addiction. Turn to Romans 1. Romans 1, verse 18. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who hold the truth in unrighteousness. Because that which may be known of God is manifest in them, for God hath showed it unto them. For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. Behold that, when they knew God, they glorified him not as God, neither were thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools, and changed the glory of the uncorruptible God into the image of made like to corruptible man, and to birds, and four-footed beasts, and creeping things. Therefore God also gave them up to uncleanness through the lust of their own hearts, to dishonor their own bodies between themselves, who changed the truth of God into a lie, and worshipped and served the creature more than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. For this cause God gave them up unto vile affections, for even their women did change the natural use into that which is against nature. And likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lust one towards another, men with men, working that which is unseemly, and received in themselves that recompense of their error which was meet. And even God, as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a reprobate mind to do those things which are not convenient. They didn't want to retain God in their knowledge anymore. They didn't want the name. They wanted the name of God eradicated out of their society. They wanted the name of God only to be a curse word in a G-rated movie. They wanted everything that reminded them of the one who blessed and died for them on that cross, taken out of their coast, take it away from my borders. Just like the maniac of Gadara. You stay in Romans. I'll turn there just to read it to you. The maniac of Gadara. You know the story where they crossed over to the other side, and there was a man that the Gadarenes had to chain up in the cemetery and where they kept the dead, and said they had to put fetters and chains on him. And he'd break them and cut himself with rocks, and he was just crazy. Everyone was scared of him. But when he saw Jesus, and Jesus cleansed him from the demons and everything that was in him. And then went the devils out of the man and entered into the swine, and the herd ran violently down a steep place into the lake and were choked. When they had that fed them saw what was done, they fled and went and told it in the city and in the country. Then they went out to see what was done and came to Jesus and found the man, out of whom the devils were departed, sitting at the feet of Jesus, clothed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. They also which saw it told them by what means he that was possessed of the devils was healed. Then the whole multitude of the country of the Gadarenes round about besought him to depart from them, for they were taken with great fear, and he went up into the ship and returned back again. How history repeats itself. God comes down, He blesses the people, He gives them power, He gives them knowledge, He gives them prosperity, He helps them. And then we do the same thing in ignorance. We say, thank you for what you did, but would you mind just leaving? Would you mind just leaving us alone? Thank you, but we got it from here. We can take it. We don't need you. Thank you, but bye. We don't want you interrupting our lives and our pursuit of happiness and our perfect little this and that. Could you please leave? Romans 18, verse 29. No, I mean Romans, yes, Romans 1, back to we were, right, make the change. I wrote it down, I messed that up. Verse 29, Romans 1. Being filled with all unrighteousness, fornication, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, debate, deceit, malignity, whispers, backbiters, haters of God, deceitful, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents. Sounds like the news. Without understanding, covenant breakers, without natural affection, implacable, unmerciful, who knowing the judgment of God, that they which commit such things are worthy of death, not only do the same, but have pleasure in them that do them. Not wanting God in our thoughts, it's always going to lead the same direction. It's always going to end. It's always going to bring us to the same place. You know, the definition of insanity, or the definition of a fool, is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result or a different outcome, and it always is the same. There's a pattern. There's a history. It's not hidden. Okay, run from it. I should turn to Daniel chapter 5. Daniel chapter 5. Belshazzar the king made a great feast to 1,000 of his lords and drank wine before the 1,000. Belshazzar, whilst he tasted wine, commanded to bring the golden and silver vessels which his father Nebuchadnezzar had taken out of the temple, which was in Jerusalem. And the king and his princes, his wives, his concubines might drink therein. When they brought the golden vessels and were taken out of the temple of the house of God, which was at Jerusalem, and the king and his princes and his wives and his concubines drank in them. They drank wine and praised the gods of gold and of silver and of brass, of iron, of wood, and of stone. In the same hour came forth fingers of the man's hand and wrote over against the candlestick upon the plaster of the wall of the king's palace. And the king saw the part of the hand that wrote. Then the king's countenance was changed, and his thoughts troubled him, so that the joints of his loins were loosed, and his knees smote one against the other. Belshazzar chose to take the holy things of God that had been taken out of Solomon's temple in Jerusalem, And he began to party with the holy things of God. He began to praise the gods of this and that, and stone and gold and silver. And he began to party with the holy things of God. Verse 8 says, Then came in all the king's wise men, and they could not read the writing nor make known to the king the interpretation thereof. They knew that God was trying to speak to them, but they couldn't understand it. That's what happens when you begin to play with the holy things, the important things of God. That's what happens when you take the cross of Christ lightly, when he died on that cross for you. When that kind of spirit gets a hold of God's people, they open the book, but they can't understand it. How unaware this generation is going to be. How taken aback, how confused when hell breaks loose and breaks open and God comes back. And they're going to say, Preacher, you preached to me that if I came to Jesus, it would be wealth, health, prosperity, and happiness, and a bigger slice of the pie. You lied to me. Belshazzar could recognize the truth, but strangely couldn't hear it. You could be sitting here out there in your seat knowing that these words are true out of the Bible. Not my words, but the words out of this Bible is still not here. It's still not allow it to change the behavior or change you or move you enough to where you want to change and go with God. My ways are not God's ways. God, forgive me, O wretched man that I am. Psalms 10:4 says, The wicked through the pride of his countenance will not seek after God. God is not in all his thoughts. And if you are able to still be under conviction, thank God. If you are living in sin and are bothered by it, thank God, because God's still fighting for you. God's still in you. God's still with you. There's still two opposing forces that are fighting. If you give up, you either go to one side or the other. There may be a war in your mind that's fighting, but thank God it's there. He's still fighting for you. He's still with you. The danger is when God is no longer in your thoughts. When you've sinned away the day of grace like they used to preach in the church. When you've so resisted God and pushed him away and finally draws back and says, okay, you do it how you see fit. You decide what's right and wrong, and you do what you want to do. Psalms 15 said, Lord, who shall abide in thy tabernacle? Who shall dwell in our holy hill? He that walketh uprightly and worketh righteousness and speaketh the truth in his heart. Hebrews 3:15 says, While it is said today, if you will hear his voice, harden not your hearts, as in the provocation. You can still hear his voice. Don't harden your heart to him. Open up to him. Don't harden your heart. If you feel like there's a war in your head, like I said, thank God it's there. He's still fighting for you. He's not let you go. He's not giving you up. Thank God if you're bothered by your sin. Thank God if you can't sleep at night and you sweat and you wonder and you worry and you pray. Thank God it means there's still a war going on. We're living in a time like Daniel, where statues are being raised and erected and brought up, and when you hear the music, if you don't bow, you're going to suffer for it. Joshua 24 says, And if it seem evil unto you to serve the Lord, choose you this day whom you will serve, whether the gods which your fathers served that were on the other side of the flood, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land ye dwell. That's for me and my house. We will serve the Lord. It says, choose you this day.
Good preaching, Jay. Really good. This world is going to tell you, it's like Jacob was preaching, this world is going to tell you that everything, people forget about all that God stuff, and because that's not any fun. You're not going to have any fun doing that. You're not going to enjoy that. Matter of fact, they'll even mock it. They'll mock God. They'll mock the church. And it's, at first it might bother you a little bit because you know it's wrong. But then you'll maybe just laugh alongside them, and so you don't look like you're the only one out. And before long, then you're going to be in the same place mocking the church, and then you'll harden your heart. You'll come to a place where it won't bother you. You guys have been raised in a church, in a place where you know better. You know better, and the world's going to try to take that away from you. And if you don't get grounded and get something really strong in you, it's going to be hard to fight it because the devil's strong. The devil's going to try to suck it away from you, and it won't be that he won't come against you in a way where it's black and white. He'll just start taking you further and further. It's like being out in the ocean and the tide is pulling you and you don't realize it. You feel like you're swimming, you feel like you're doing okay, and then all of a sudden you realize you're getting farther from the shore and you can't get back. And that's the way he does it. He does it. If he came right down and told you, oh, just go ahead and say God's, not true. You'd say, well, I know it, I believe it's true, but he won't do it that way. He'll do it subtly. He's like the serpent. He said he was subtle. He knew how to bring things in without you really realizing it and turn your heart before you understood what was happening. And that's what he wants to do. And you have, like Jay says, we have a choice. Our house, we're trying our best to hold on to this house and keep our house serving God. But every one of us has a choice. It's not just my choice, or not just Nathan's choice, or Jacob's choice. It's all of our choice. Every one of you have a choice to make. Because like we talked about, your body is a temple. Your body is your own house. I mean, everybody has to answer for it. And we can come together and we can hold church and everything, but you're the one that has to say, as for me in this house right here, I'm going to serve the Lord. It's not just this building, it's not just our church together, but every one of us has to say in their own heart, I'm going to serve the Lord. And like I said, it's going to be harder and harder as you get older and older. And so, like Jay said, now's the time to make that decision in your heart and yourself, that you're going to go with God and stay with God. And it doesn't matter. You don't have to surrender to preach. You don't have to surrender to be, any big thing. But because you can serve God in a lot of different kind of ways. The danger is just don't get pulled away from it, because if you don't make a decision, I'm going to stay with God, even if I'm just have a family and raise my family and raise them to the glory of God, then that's fine. That's what God has for you to do. All you do, you don't have to say, I'm making a big commitment to be an evangelist or something like that. But if you don't make a commitment of some sort, then it's going to start slipping away. The sand's going to start out from under your foundation. It's going to start pulling away until one day you realize that you're on ground that's not going to hold you anymore, and you're going to fall. So make that decision today. Get on that solid rock. Get on that ground that's going to hold you. No matter what comes from now on, you're already on that solid rock. It's going to hold you. Let's go ahead and pray tonight. It's been a good service, and I thank the Lord for that. We needed it tonight, and I did. I'm glad for it. A few things we want to pray about or want to mention. Shaw Garrett, her numbers have gone back up again, and so she's struggling and hurt and having some pain. And it's a battle. We're just trying to keep the devil and this illness and everything just pushed back. Give her some time and more time here, and so let's continue to push. I mean, the saints have prayed and kept it at bay. You know what I mean? And I believe it's from the saints, the prayers of the saints that have been praying for her. A lot of people have prayed. So let's don't let up now. Let's keep praying for her. Sandy asked that we pray for our country, first of all, because there's some awful things going on in the country right now, and it's a scary time, and scary things that can happen. But they called up the National Guard from Tennessee to go to Washington D.C. and Matt's son Matthew is called up to go in the National Guard with them to Washington D.C. And it's a dangerous place right now to be.
Yes.
And so pray for all of them, and pray for all of our military that might be involved, and the policemen, and I'm 100% for the policemen and for the military and all this. And I know there's bad people in every bunch. The press is going to want to make you think that, okay, because this policeman did something bad, that policeman is bad. Policemen are out there every day risking their lives, serving their communities and families, and trying to take care of our country every day by the tens of thousands of times a day that they do what's right and what needs to be done and protect our property and our families. And yeah, there are times when there's a bad egg and this guy does something wrong or makes a mistake. And I'm not saying it shouldn't be punished or it's right. I'm saying it's wrong if that was the case. But idea that, well, we still need to stand behind these policemen, because now it's harder for them, even now. When something like this happens, all of a sudden, all the rest of them have to suffer the resistance of everybody else, and people saying, oh, police are bad. Well, they're not. And if we didn't have them, then we'd be in really bad shape. There would be, sure enough, trouble. And so, pray for them. They have a hard job, and all the many that are trying to do well and trying to do right, pray for them that they'll have strength and that the Lord protect them and protect our country. So do pray for those folks. Anybody else have anything we want to mention tonight?
Henry asked if you guys can pray for him and his family.
Henry? Okay, we'll do it. Pray for Henry.
Angel asked that we pray for a personal prayer request for her.
Okay. All right.
I don't want to forget Christina's mother too, as far as I know, her health's okay, but
Yeah.
she's not safe.
Yeah. You go back to Christina, her friend, the one that does the oils and stuff, sells the oils, and she's got good friends with her, and her mother had cancer, or what was it?
She had a transplant, a liver and kidney
Oh, yeah, no, I didn't know if it was because of cancer, but she had to have a transplant.
transplant.
Both of them, both transplants within 10 days or whatever, she was gonna die, and a lot of people prayed, and she got the transplant, so miraculously got the transplant.
Yes.
And, but she's not saved, and the family's been up there trying to pray for her, and the Lord's given her some more time. So just pray that, because they're still obviously concerned, not more for her salvation than for her health. I mean,
Yes.
they won't see her get saved, so pray for her. All right, anybody else have something? All right, let's all try to pray tonight, pray for these folks, pray for each other, and, pray for, our country right now is in a place where, our country is in a place where there's so few people now anymore that are going to stand up for God and stand up for what's right, that this is just like I'm talking about with your own personal, your own heart and your own life. As fewer and fewer people will stand up and pray and do what's right, then eventually the other folks are going to take over.
Yes.
Our country is founded on principles from the Bible and of God, and putting God first in our country and in our families and stuff. But fewer and fewer people are doing that, and it's going to be to the point where eventually it's going to be taken over. And I'm afraid that's the way it's going to go, and I think that's the way it's supposed to go, but it's still hard to watch it go and not stand up and try.
Yes.
But it's the same way with your life. If you let a little bit go at a time, a little bit go, and eventually the devil's got more of your life than God does, because you've given it to the devil. Let him take it from you. And so let's pray for our country, that those of us that can pray, and those of us just continue to pray. And even if it gets to 100 to 1, let's just keep praying and ask the Lord to protect our country. So let's go ahead and pray now. Everybody try to pray tonight. Our Heavenly Father, I'm thankful, Lord, tonight that we can be in church. I'm thankful, Lord, tonight that we have a God that's all powerful tonight, Lord. It's all more powerful than the devil, Lord. I don't want to give us, talk about, Lord, that we're instead of losing the battle, Lord, you've already won the victory. But this world is going to burn up. This world is going to go, Lord. And this world is going to, Lord, this world is not going to be something we can hang on to. The only thing we're going to have to hang on to is Jesus Christ. He's going to be our lifeline, Lord. When this ship sinks, Lord, He's going to be the lifeboat that's going to take us out of here, Lord. And I'm thankful for that tonight, Lord. And I pray for these kids, Lord, that don't have that already in their heart, or don't have, Lord, that lifeboat already prepared for them, Lord. Don't have a way, Lord, when they go down, Lord. I pray for them. Touch their hearts, Lord, tonight. Help them to really get it tonight, Lord. Help Elect tonight, Lord. Touch her, Lord, tonight. Really touch her heart, Lord. Help her to see, Lord. She can go ahead and get saved, Lord. And maybe she wants to, Lord, tonight, but I just pray you come and touch her and let her feel your presence and let her feel your touch on her heart. And know that you've done it, Lord. Know that you've saved her. And I pray for these others, Lord. I pray for Ransom, Lord.
desire, God.
Pray for him, coach him to say he has
Give us a
said,
desire, God,
grace, Lord, touch
to
them,
be a part
Lord.
of the
Let them know that you've changed something in their heart, changed something in their life, Lord. And give them that assurance, Lord, that they're saved. Give them that assurance, Lord. That they don't have to worry about their eternal soul any longer, Lord, that you've got to take care of.
Someone
Bless your
heard
name
me.
tonight, Lord. I thank you, Lord, for all that you're doing. I thank you, Lord, for the church, and we come and pray for each other, Lord. It's a deadly and a dangerous world we live in today, Lord. And I pray, Lord, for each one of these kids. I pray for their hearts and their souls, Lord. I thank you for the ones that are saved, Lord, and I thank you for the prayers.
Show us
I
the
thank you for
benefits
praying, Lord, for each other.
many
And I
times.
thank you for that tonight, Lord. And I pray for them, Lord, tonight. And I pray that you use them to bless them, hear their prayers, Lord, hear their prayers, Lord, as they send them up to you tonight, Lord. Show us how to pray, Lord. Just help them, Lord, to be able to say something, Lord. And you'll take those prayers and take them and
How
make
you
them
wish
sweet, Lord.
to be children.
And I pray for that. I ask you for that,
Your
Lord,
ears
tonight.
ever
Give me
be
that Holy
Lord,
Spirit,
this
Lord.
Lord.
Put the Holy
We
Spirit
desire
in
you
there.
to look at you now for your God
I
and
pray for
lead
what you
us
made
through
tonight,
these
Lord.
troubled
Pray for Christina's
days.
mom.
Well, thank you for the church, Lord. Thank you for letting us come
And I pray
together
that
again
I
tonight.
pray that you save
Thank
her.
you for giving
I pray,
us
Lord,
God
that
a
you
desire
put
to
Jesus
pray
in his
right
veins,
now.
Lord, the burial that you performed,
Lord.
Lord.
Thank you for
Lord,
the
I know that
blessings,
she's trying to
Lord,
deny it, she's trying to resist it, Lord, she's trying to,
God,
but I pray, Lord, that you wouldn't be denied, Lord, that you get hold of her and save her. For Jesus' name's sake, Lord, touch her for Jesus' name's sake, Lord. Father, I pray, Lord, tonight, Lord, that you know each and every need, each and every heart, Lord. I pray, Lord, for all these military that are going to Washington and other cities, Lord, and National Guard, they called out any place